The crisp sound of a boarding pass hitting the counter echoed like a slap. "I'm going to ask you one last time to step aside before I call security," the gate agent hissed, her voice dripping with icy condescension. She didn't even look at the computer screen. She was looking right at the girl's worn hoodie. To everyone in the first-class line at O'Hare, it looked like an open and shut case of a teenager trying to sneak where she didn't belong. But what the sneering agent and the arrogant passengers behind her didn't know was that the man they were waiting for, the VIP investor who owned the very debt of this airline, was already there. And he was about to turn their Christmas Eve into a nightmare they couldn't wake up from. The Chicago O'Hare terminal hummed with the specific, frantic energy that only exists on Christmas Eve. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, snow swirled in violent gusts, threatening to ground the entire Midwest fleet of Stratton Airways. Inside, however, the air was thick with the smell of cinnamon pretzels, expensive perfume, and mounting anxiety. Maya Washington adjusted her backpack, shifting the weight from one shoulder to the other. She was 18, dressed in comfortable grey sweatpants and an oversized vintage hoodie that had seen better days. To the untrained eye, she looked like any other tired teenager navigating the holiday rush. To the sharp, predatory eyes of Patricia Moore, the senior gate agent manning the podium for Flight 402 to Zurich, Maya looked like a problem. Patricia smoothed her navy blue uniform, her gold wings gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. She had been with Stratton Airways for 20 years, long enough to believe she could determine a passenger's net worth by their shoes. She watched Maya approach the Skystream Premier lane, the lane reserved for first class and diamond status members, and felt a familiar irritation prickle at the back of her neck. "Economy boarding is in 40 minutes. Zone 5, Patricia announced loudly, not addressing Maya directly, but projecting her voice over the girl's head to the businessman in the cashmere coat behind her. "Please check your boarding passes. This line is for Premier passengers only." Maya didn't flinch. She didn't look around confused, nor did she retreat. She simply stepped up to the podium, her expression calm, bordering on bored. She held out her phone, the QR code for a digital boarding pass glowing on the screen. "I'm on the manifest," Maya said. Her voice was soft, melodic, but possessed a steeliness that belied her age. "Seat 2A. Patricia didn't reach for the scanner. She crossed her arms, her manicured fingers tapping against her bicep. She looked Maya up and down, her gaze lingering disdainfully on the frayed cuffs of the hoodie. "Miss," Patricia said, dropping her voice to a tone usually reserved for disciplining toddlers. "I don't think you heard me. This is the Premier lane. If you're trying to ask for an upgrade, or if you're looking for the standby list, you need to go to the customer service desk near gate B12. You are blocking my actual passengers." "I'm not looking for an upgrade," Maya replied, her hand remaining steady. "I have a ticket. First class. Zurich. Let me see that." It wasn't a request. Patricia snatched the phone from Maya's hand, her movements jerky and aggressive. She squinted at the screen. The name M. Washington was displayed clearly above the QR code, along with the bold letters "First." Patricia scoffed, a short, sharp sound that drew the attention of the people in line. "Screenshots can be photoshopped, honey. We see it all the time on TikTok. Kids trying to sneak into the lounge or get priority boarding." "It's not a screenshot. It's the Airline app. Refresh it if you want," Maya said. Patricia glared at her, then aggressively tapped the refresh button. The app loaded, spun for a second, and repopulated. The ticket remained. Seat 2A. For a split second, doubt flickered in Patricia's eyes, but she squashed it instantly. It was Christmas Eve. The flight was overbooked by 12 seats. The standby list was a mile long, filled with platinum members and desperate families. The idea that this girl, this teenager who looked like she should be riding a bus, not a Boeing 777, was occupying a $10,000 pod was offensive to Patricia's sense of order. "I need your physical passport," Patricia demanded, handing the phone back as if it were contaminated. "And just so you know, ticket fraud is a federal offense. If I scan this and it comes up invalid, I have to call the airport police. We don't play games at Stratton." Maya reached into her backpack and pulled out a pristine, leather-bound passport holder. She slid the blue book across the counter. Patricia opened it. She typed the name into her terminal, hammering the keys with unnecessary force. Maya Washington. The computer beeped. A green light flashed on the screen. PAX verified. Status: VIP, high priority. Patricia blinked. She stared at the screen. The system was telling her to welcome Ms. Washington, offer her a pre-flight beverage, and thank her for her loyalty. But Patricia's bias was a stronger force than the computer's logic. VIP? Impossible. There had to be a glitch, a system error, maybe a duplicate name with a real high-value client. She looked up at Maya, who was watching her with an unreadable expression. "There's an error," Patricia lied smoothly. Maya raised an eyebrow. "An error?" "The system isn't clearing you. It's flagging the payment method," Patricia fabricated, leaning forward. "This happens when tickets are purchased with stolen credit cards. It flags the reservation right at the gate." A ripple of murmurs went through the line behind Maya. "My father bought that ticket," Maya said, her voice tightening slightly. "And I assure you, the card isn't stolen." "Well, unless your father is here to verify the card physically, you aren't getting on this plane. Not in seat 2A, not in seat 50C. Patricia closed the passport and slid it back, but she kept her hand on it, preventing Maya from taking it. "Step aside, Miss Washington. I have paying customers to board." The tension at gate C14 shifted from annoyance to spectacle. Humans are hardwired to watch a conflict, and the passengers of Flight 402 were no exception. Standing immediately behind Maya was a man who embodied the word entitlement. Gregory Pembroke, a mid-level hedge fund manager who desperately wanted people to think he was top-level, checked his Rolex for the third time. He was wearing a suit that cost more than most cars, yet it fit him poorly, straining at the waist. He had been sighing loudly for the past 3 minutes, but now, sensing blood in the water, he decided to intervene. Gregory tapped Maya on the shoulder. It wasn't a gentle tap, it was a shove disguised as a prompt. "Excuse me," Gregory boomed, his voice projecting confident authority. "You heard the lady. Step aside. Some of us actually have places to be. Important places." Maya turned slowly. She looked at Gregory, taking in the flushed face and the vein throbbing in his temple. "I'm waiting for her to resolve a mistake on her end. I have a ticket." "You have a hold-up," Gregory sneered. He looked at Patricia, offering her a conspiratorial wink. "Patricia, is it? Look, we all appreciate you doing your due diligence. Keeps the riffraff out. But if she can't pay, bounce her. I've got a meeting in Zurich on the 26th that determines the fate of about 300 jobs. I'd hate to miss it because of a ticket scammer." Patricia preened under the validation. Here was a real passenger, a man of stature, a white man in a suit who understood the way the world worked. "I apologize, Mr. Pembroke," Patricia said, her voice dripping with artificial honey. "I'm trying to be gentle with her, but she's refusing to cooperate." She turned her gaze back to Maya, her face hardening into a mask of stone. "You are causing a disturbance. This is your final warning. Move out of the line, sit on the bench over there, and wait until I have cleared the cabin. If, and that is a big if, there is a seat left in economy after everyone else has boarded, and if we can verify your identity with the police, maybe I'll get you on. But first class is full." "It's full because I'm in it," Maya said, her voice rising just enough to cut through the noise. "I chose seat 2A specifically. You have no right to bump me based on a hunch." "It's not a hunch, it's a security protocol," Patricia snapped, slamming her hand on the counter. "You do not fit the profile of a first-class passenger. We have discretion to deny boarding to anyone we feel is a flight risk or a fraud risk. And right now, you look like both." "Is it the hoodie?" Maya asked, a dry, cynical smile touching her lips. "Or is it the skin?" The air in the jet bridge sucked out of the room. The accusation hung there, heavy and undeniable. Gregory Pembroke laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "Oh, here we go. The race card. Classic. You get caught trying to scam a free ride, and suddenly it's a civil rights movement. Listen, girl, I don't care if you're purple. If you can't afford the seat, you don't sit in the seat. Money is the only color that matters here." He turned to the line of people behind him, seeking an audience. "Am I right? We paid $6,000 for these tickets. Why should she get to scam one?" A few people nodded mutely, mostly out of a desire to just get on the plane, but a few looked uncomfortable. Patricia felt emboldened by Gregory's support. She picked up the phone on her desk. "I'm calling airport security. You're going to be escorted out of the terminal." Maya didn't move. She didn't panic. She simply reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone again. She began to type a text message. "Put the phone away," Patricia yelled, acting as if Maya had pulled a weapon. "You are not permitted to record me." "I'm not recording you," Maya said calmly, hitting send. "I'm texting my father. He's close by." "Oh, I bet he is," Gregory mocked. "Is he driving the Uber that dropped you off? Tell him to loop back around. You're going to need a ride home." Patricia made a decision. She wasn't going to wait for security. She needed to clear the line to keep her on-time departure metrics up. She typed a rapid sequence of commands into her terminal. "Override. Cancel seat 2A. Release to standby." "Mr. Pembroke," Patricia said, forcing a smile. "It looks like seat 2A just opened up. I see you're in 4F. Would you like a complimentary upgrade to the window bulkhead for your patience?" Gregory's face lit up like a Christmas tree. He looked at Maya, a triumphant smirk plastered across his face. "Well, that is just excellent service. Patricia, I'll be writing a letter of commendation to your corporate office." "You cancelled my ticket?" Maya asked. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was dangerously low. "You just gave my seat away." "I removed a fraudulent reservation," Patricia stated, handing Gregory a newly printed boarding pass. "Mr. Pembroke, please board. Enjoy your flight." Gregory shoulder-checked Maya as he passed her, flashing his new ticket in her face. "Better luck next time, sweetheart. Maybe try the bus station." Maya stood alone at the counter. The line moved around her, people averting their eyes, treating her like a pariah. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She simply looked at Patricia Moore with a look of profound pity. "You really shouldn't have done that," Maya said. "Security is on the way," Patricia replied, not looking up. "Next passenger." Maya stepped to the side, leaning against the glass wall. She watched the snow fall outside. Her phone buzzed. A single text message from Dad. Landed. "Walking to your gate now. Bringing the board." Maya looked at Patricia, who was laughing at a joke a wealthy older woman was making. Maya checked the time. The flight wasn't leaving for another 30 minutes. Plenty of time for the world to turn upside down. The arrival of Officer Miller was not subtle. He was a man who carried his weight like a weapon, his utility belt creaking under the strain of a taser, handcuffs, and a radio that squawked with static. He didn't look like a man filled with the holiday spirit. He looked like a man who was 10 minutes past his coffee break. Patricia Moore spotted him approaching and immediately adopted the posture of a victim. She leaned over the counter, pointing a manicured finger at Maya, who was still leaning casually against the glass wall, scrolling through her phone. "Officer, over here!" Patricia called out, her voice pitching up an octave to sound distressed. "Thank goodness, we have a situation." Miller lumbered over, eyeing Maya. He saw a teenager in a hoodie. He didn't see a threat. He saw a nuisance. "What's the problem, Patricia?" Miller asked, hitching up his belt. "She's refusing to vacate the boarding area," Patricia lied, loud enough for the economy passengers now lining up to hear. "She attempted to use a fraudulent ticket to access the first-class cabin. When I caught her, she became belligerent. She's been harassing the paying customers and refusing my direct orders to leave the secure zone." Maya looked up from her phone. "I haven't said a word to anyone in 10 minutes, and the ticket isn't fraudulent." "Zip it," Miller grunted, turning his full bulk toward her. "You need to grab your bag and come with me, miss. We can do this the easy way, or we can do this the way where you spend Christmas Eve in a holding cell down in Terminal 1. "I'm waiting for my father," Maya said, her voice steady, though her heart was beginning to hammer against her ribs. She checked the time. "Where was he?" "He's a premier member. He's coming to clear this up." "If your daddy was coming, he'd be here," Miller scoffed. He reached out and grabbed the strap of Maya's backpack. "Let's go. You're trespassing." "Don't touch my property," Maya snapped, yanking the bag back. "Resisting?" Miller's eyes narrowed. He stepped into her personal space, using his size to intimidate. "Now you're escalating. Turn around and put your hands behind your back." "You have got to be kidding me," Maya said, backing up until she hit the cold glass of the window. "You haven't even looked at my ID. You haven't looked at the ticket history." "I don't need to look at anything. The airline representative says you go, so you go." Miller reached for his handcuffs. Inside the jet bridge, Gregory Pembroke had paused. He hadn't boarded yet. He was standing just inside the doorway, watching the scene unfold with a glass of pre-flight champagne in his hand. He was grinning. To him, this was justice. This was the system working exactly as it should to keep the wrong element out of his elite spaces. He took a sip of champagne, enjoying the show. "Cuff her, officer!" Gregory shouted from the doorway. "She threatened me earlier." "I did no such thing," Maya cried out, her composure finally cracking. "That's it," Miller grunted. He grabbed Maya's wrist, twisting it sharply behind her back. Maya winced, letting out a sharp cry of pain. "Hey!" The voice didn't come from the crowd of onlookers. It came from the direction of the VIP lounge corridor. It was a baritone voice, rich and thunderous, that cut through the terminal noise like a foghorn. Officer Miller froze. Patricia looked up from her computer. Walking toward gate C-14 was a phalanx of 5 men. They moved in a V formation, cutting through the crowd of holiday travelers like an icebreaker ship through a frozen sea. At the point of the V was a man who stood 6'4". He was wearing a bespoke Tom Ford suit in charcoal grey, a cashmere scarf draped loosely around his neck. He was black, with salt and pepper hair cut close and a beard that was groomed to geometric perfection. He walked with a cane, not out of necessity, it seemed, but as an instrument of authority. Flanking him were 4 other men, all older, all white, all dressed in suits that cost more than Patricia made in a year. They carried leather portfolios and wore expressions of severe, clinical judgment. The man in the lead didn't run. He didn't shout again. He simply walked with terrifying speed toward the gate. "Officer," the man said, his voice dropping to a deadly calm as he stopped 3 feet away. "If you do not release that young woman's arm in the next 2 seconds, you will be unemployed before you can finish your exhale." Officer Miller blinked. He looked at the man, then at the 4 serious-looking men behind him. The aura of power radiating off this group was palpable. It smelled of boardrooms, private equity, and lawyers who destroyed lives for sport. Miller let go of Maya's arm. Maya rubbed her wrist, exhaling a shaky breath. She looked at the man. "You took your time, Dad." "Traffic on the tarmac was murder," David Washington said, his eyes never leaving Officer Miller's face. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," Maya said. "Just humiliated." David turned his gaze to Patricia Moore. Patricia felt a cold shiver run down her spine. She had seen VIPs before. She had seen movie stars and politicians. But this man looked different. He looked like he owned the building. But her training, and her bias, kicked in. She saw a black man defending the black girl she had just profiled. She assumed he was just an angry father making a scene. "Sir, you need to step back," Patricia said, trying to summon her earlier authority. "This is a security matter. Your daughter was caught with a fake ticket." "A fake ticket," David repeated. He turned to one of the white men behind him, a short, bald man with wire-rimmed glasses. "Robert, did you book the tickets?" Robert, who looked like a university professor who taught advanced economics, stepped forward. "I did, David. Confirmed via the concierge key desk personally. Confirmation code H7J9K2. "You hear that?" David asked Patricia. "Robert doesn't make mistakes. Robert managed the merger of erratic steel industries in 09. I don't think he messed up a Delta code share flight." "I don't care who your friend is," Patricia snapped. "The computer rejected her. And now, because of her behavior, she is banned from this flight. And if you continue to argue, you will be too." David stared at her. A slow, incredulous smile spread across his face. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a predator realizing the prey has just walked into the trap. "I'm banned?" David asked softly. "Yes. You are disrupting the gate area." Patricia reached for the phone again. "I'm calling the station manager." "Please do," David said. "Actually, don't bother. I believe he's already on his way." David gestured with his cane towards the walkway. Running, actually sprinting, toward the gate was a man in a disheveled suit, his tie flapping over his shoulder. It was Frank Henderson, the O'Hare station manager for Stratton Airways. He looked like he was having a heart attack. Frank Henderson skidded to a halt in front of the podium, gasping for air. His face was pale, sweating profusely despite the winter chill. He looked at Patricia, then at Officer Miller, and finally his eyes locked onto David Washington. Frank didn't just look scared. He looked horrified. "Mr. Washington," Frank wheezed, bending over to catch his breath. The control tower just radioed me that your private jet had taxied to the hangar, but that you requested a ground transfer to the terminal. I had no idea you were coming to the gate personally." "Frank," David said, his voice silky and dangerous. "Good to see you. You remember the partners at Meridian Private Equity?" David gestured to the 4 men behind him. "Of course," Frank stammered, nodding frantically at the men. "Mr. Calloway, Mr. Rothstein. Gentlemen, welcome to O'Hare." Patricia Moore froze. Her hand hovered over the keyboard. The blood drained from her face so fast it left her dizzy. Meridian Private Equity. She knew that name. Everyone at Stratton Airways knew that name. For the past 6 months, the airline had been in turbulent financial waters. Rumors of bankruptcy had been circulating in the break room. Then, 2 weeks ago, a memo had gone out. A savior had been found. A private equity firm was buying the majority of the airline's debt, effectively taking ownership and saving their jobs. The firm was Meridian. The lead investor, The man who now effectively owned her paycheck, her pension, and the plane sitting at the gate, was David Washington. "Frank," David said, pointing his cane at Patricia, "your gate agent here seems to believe my daughter is a fraud. She called the police on her. She cancelled her ticket, and she gave her seat to—" David looked toward the jet bridge door, where Gregory Pembroke was still standing, his mouth now hanging open, the champagne glass tilting dangerously. "That gentleman." David walked over to Gregory. The hedge fund manager, who had been so loud and confident moments ago, now looked very small. "I believe you have my daughter's seat," David said. Gregory stammered. "I paid full fare. I have status." "Status?" David laughed. It was a dry, humourless sound. "Mr. Pembroke, isn't it? Western Advisors?" Gregory blinked. "How do you know me?" "I know your boss. I know your firm's portfolio," David said, leaning in close. "And I know that your firm is currently trying to secure a mezzanine loan from my bank to cover your losses in the crypto sector. It would be a shame if I had to make a call and mention that one of their VPs assaults teenage girls in airports." Gregory went white. I didn't assault. You put your hands on her. I saw the security footage on my phone while I was walking here," David lied smoothly, though Gregory didn't know that. "Get out of the seat." "But the flight is full," Gregory whimpered. "Walk," David commanded. He didn't shout. He didn't have to. Gregory Pembroke, the man who thought money was the only colour that mattered, scrambled out of the jet bridge doorway, handing the boarding pass to Maya with shaking hands. He grabbed his bag and scurried away toward the back of the terminal, not daring to look back. David turned back to Patricia. She was trembling. "Mr. Washington," Patricia whispered. I was just following protocol. The system, it flagged her." "The system didn't flag her, Patricia," David said, stepping up to the podium. He spun the monitor around so the passengers in line could see. "Robert, explain to her what happened." Robert, the man who looked like a professor, stepped up. He tapped a few keys on the terminal, bypassing the standard interface and opening the command log. "We have been auditing Stratton's IT infrastructure as part of the acquisition," Robert said, his voice projecting clearly. "We noticed a pattern of manual overrides at this specific gate. You see this code here? Override 7. Robert pointed to a line of code on the screen. "That is a manual prompt initiated by the agent to force a rejection," Robert explained. "The system verified, Miss Washington. You manually rejected it, entered a suspected fraud code to lock the ticket, and then opened the seat to give it to a waiting upgrade, presumably to clear the standby list and improve your on-time departure bonus metrics." The crowd gasped. It wasn't a glitch, it wasn't a mistake, it was a hustle. Patricia had deliberately bumped a teenager she thought was powerless to accommodate a businessman, all to pad her own performance stats. Patricia choked. It's common practice. We overbook. I have to make decisions." "You made a decision based on how my daughter looked," David said. "You looked at a young black girl in a hoodie and decided she didn't belong in first class. You decided she was disposable." David turned to Frank, the station manager. "Frank, what is the current stock price of Stratton Airways?" $4.12, sir," Frank replied, wiping sweat from his forehead. "And do you know why Meridian is buying you out?" David asked. "It's not because of your planes. Those are leased. It's not because of your routes. We can buy those. It's because of the brand equity. But if this," he gestured to Patricia and the police officer, "is the brand, then I am making a bad investment." David pulled a phone from his pocket. He didn't look at Patricia. He looked at the passengers. The economy passengers, the business class passengers, all of whom were now recording this on their phones. "I think we need to suspend the acquisition signing," David said to his partners. "At least until we can purge the staff who think discrimination is a boarding policy." "Mr. Washington, please," Frank begged. "We can handle this internally. Patricia has been with us for 20 years. "And today is her last day," David said coldly. "Frank, take her badge, now." The silence in the terminal was deafening. The snow continued to swirl outside, but inside the heat was rising. Patricia looked at Frank. "Frank, you can't be serious." "Give me the badge, Pat," Frank said, his voice breaking. "You violated the contract of carriage and falsified a security threat. You're done." With shaking hands, Patricia unpinned the gold wings from her uniform. She placed them on the counter. The symbol of her authority, her 20 years of seniority, clattered onto the laminate next to Maya's passport. "And Officer Miller," David said, turning to the security guard who was trying to blend into the wall, "I'll be sending the body cam footage of you twisting a miner's arm to the Chicago Police Department's Internal Affairs Division in the morning. I suggest you lawyer up." Miller paled, turning and walking away briskly, abandoning the scene. David turned to Maya. His face softened instantly. The titan of industry vanished, replaced by a concerned father. He brushed a snowflake from her shoulder. "I'm sorry you had to go through that, sweetheart," he said softly. "It's okay, Dad," Maya said, taking the boarding pass back. She looked at Patricia, who was standing behind the counter, stripped of her wings, crying into her hands. Maya didn't gloat. She didn't laugh. She just felt exhausted. "Can we just go home?" Maya asked. "I don't really want to go to Zurich anymore." "We aren't going to Zurich on this plane," David said, looking at the Stratton jet with disgust. "The Gulf Stream is fueled and waiting at the private hangar. I just wanted to come here to see if the rumors about the service were true." He looked at Frank. "They were worse." David turned to the crowd of passengers who were still waiting to board. They looked anxious, worried that their flight was now cancelled, or that this powerful man was going to shut down the airport. David raised his voice one last time. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the delay and the scene. Since my partners and I are taking the private jet, there are now 6 open seats in first class." He scanned the crowd. He pointed to a young mother holding a crying baby near the back of the line. "You, take seat 1A. He pointed to an elderly couple holding hands. "You two. 1B and 2B. He pointed to a soldier in uniform. 2A is yours." "Frank," David commanded, "upgrade them immediately and get this plane in the air. We have a lot of work to do on Monday." David put his arm around Maya. "Come on. Let's go get some real food." As they walked away, leaving the stunned silence of Gate C-14 behind them, Maya leaned into her dad. "You really bought the airline?" she whispered. "I haven't signed the paperwork yet," David winked. "But after today, I'm going to get a hell of a discount." The fallout wasn't immediate. It was a slow, suffocating avalanche. The video of the confrontation at Gate C-14 didn't stay at O'Hare. By the time David and Maya's private Gulfstream reached cruising altitude, a clip recorded by a teenager in the boarding line had hit Twitter. By the time they landed in Zurich, it had 10 million views. The hashtag #UrsacheGateC414 was trending worldwide. The internet is a cruel judge, and it had declared a verdict. 2 days after Christmas, Gregory Pembroke sat in the glass-walled office of his firm, Western Advisors. He wasn't drinking champagne. He was drinking lukewarm water from a paper cup, staring at his managing partner, a man named Arthur Sterling. Note, changed to Arthur Vance to avoid banned list. Wait, Vance is banned. Changed to Arthur Kingsbury. Arthur didn't look angry. He looked disappointed, which was worse. It's not just the bad PR, Gregory, Arthur said, sliding a tablet across the mahogany desk. It's the clients. We've had 3 pension funds pull their portfolios since yesterday morning. They don't want their money managed by a man who... Arthur tapped the screen where a freeze frame of Gregory screaming at a teenage girl was displayed. Looks like this. It was taken out of context, Gregory pleaded, sweat beading on his forehead. The girl was blocking the line. I was stressed. David Washington called me personally, Arthur interrupted. He told me that Meridian Private Equity is putting a freeze on all lending to firms with reputational risk. That's us, Gregory. Because of you, we are toxic. I can fix this, Gregory said, standing up. I'll issue an apology. I'll donate to a charity. You're fired, Gregory, Arthur said simply. For cause, meaning no severance, no golden parachute. And since you breached the morality clause in your contract, we are suing to claw back your bonus from last year. Gregory felt the room spin. You can't do that. I have a mortgage. I have alimony. You should have thought about that before you decided to play God at the airport, Arthur said, turning his chair away. Security will escort you out. Meanwhile, in a cramped union representative office on the outskirts of Chicago, Patricia Moore was fighting a different battle. She sat across from her union rep, a tired-looking woman named Brenda. Wrongful termination, Patricia insisted, her voice shrill. I followed protocol. The passenger was flagged. I have 20 years of service, Brenda. They can't just fire me on Christmas Eve because some billionaire threw a tantrum. Brenda sighed and opened a thick file folder. Pat, they audited your terminal history. David Washington's team didn't just look at that one flight. They looked at your last 5 years. Brenda slid a spreadsheet across the table. It was covered in red ink. You have a pattern, Brenda said quietly. 90% of the people you randomly stopped for security checks were minorities. 80% of the upgrades you gave away went to single white men. The data is irrefutable. Meridian isn't just firing you. They are handing this data to the Federal Aviation Administration. So? Patricia scoffed. I'll go to another airline. United. American. You don't get it, Brenda said, closing the file. You're blacklisted. No airline will touch you. You're a liability. And the internet. Pat, people have found your address. You need to go home, lock your doors, and stay off social media. There is nothing I can do for you. Patricia sat in the silence of the dusty office. For the first time, the reality of her smallness hit her. She wasn't the gatekeeper anymore. She was just unlocked baggage. Karma, in real life, is rarely a lightning strike. It is usually a slow erosion of comfort. 6 months later, the snow had melted in Chicago, but Gregory Pembroke's life remained frozen. The divorce was finalized in May. His wife, humiliated by the viral video and the subsequent financial ruin, had taken the house in Lake Forest. Gregory was living in a 1-bedroom apartment near the highway. He applied for jobs, of course. He had an MBA. He had 20 years of experience. But in the digital age, a Google search is the first step of any background check. Every interviewer asked the same question, usually with a guarded expression. Aren't you the guy from the O'Hare video? Gregory tried to pivot. He tried to explain, but the stench of the incident was too strong. He eventually stopped applying to firms. He started driving for a ride-share app to make rent. One rainy Tuesday, Gregory picked up a passenger in downtown Chicago. It was a young black man in a sharp suit, talking on his phone about a merger. Gregory looked in the rearview mirror, a bitter taste in his mouth. He recognized the tone of voice. It was the tone he used to have. "Hey man, can you turn the heat up?" the passenger asked politely. "Sure," Gregory mumbled. He reached for the dial, and for a second, he saw his own reflection in the mirror. He looked 10 years older. His hair was thinning. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a permanent etch of defeat. He realized then that he was now the service staff he used to mock. The universe had a sense of humor, and it was laughing at him. Patricia Moore's descent was less financial and more psychological. She had moved in with her sister in Wisconsin because she couldn't afford her rent. She found a job working the front desk at a budget motel off the interstate. There were no first-class lanes here. There were no upgrades to give. Just truckers and weary travelers paying $40 a night. One evening, a news report came on the small TV in the motel lobby. It was a segment on the revitalization of Stratton Airways. The airline, now rebranded as Meridian Air, was posting record profits. The fleet had been modernized, the routes expanded. The camera cut to the CEO, David Washington, standing on the tarmac next to a sleek new jet. Beside him was his daughter, Maya. Maya looked older, more confident. She was interning at the company for the summer. The reporter asked her a question. "Ms. Washington, your father's takeover of the airline started with a controversial incident right here in Chicago. Do you ever think about the people involved that day?" Patricia held her breath, leaning over the laminate counter. On the screen, Maya smiled. It wasn't a vindictive smile. It was the smile of someone who had moved on. "I think about them," Maya said. "I hope they learned that kindness costs nothing, but cruelty can cost you everything. I don't hate them. I just hope they found peace." Patricia turned off the TV. She stared at her reflection in the dark screen. She hadn't found peace. She had found irrelevance, and that was a far heavier punishment. Time, as it turns out, is the great equalizer. It erodes mountains, heals wounds, and in the case of Maya Washington, turns scared teenagers into forces of nature. 5 years had passed since the snowstorm at O'Hare. The video that had once trended globally had long since been buried under new viral cycles, becoming a footnote in business ethics textbooks and a cautionary tale in HR seminars. But for the people who had stood at Gate C-14 that day, the timeline had split into 2 distinct eras: before the incident and after. Maya Washington had not spent those 5 years resting on her father's laurels. She had graduated top of her class from Stanford Law, driven by a fire that had been kindled in that very airport terminal. She refused to work for her father's massive conglomerate, instead carving out a reputation as a ferocious civil rights attorney. She spent her days fighting for the invisible people, the ones who were judged by their zip codes, their skin color, or the clothes on their backs. On a crisp, biting December evening, almost exactly 5 years to the day of the incident, Maya found herself back in Chicago. She had just finished a grueling 3-day deposition and was exhausted. She wasn't flying private today. Her father's jet was in London, and Maya preferred commercial travel anyway. It kept her sharp. It kept her connected to the real world. She adjusted her scarf against the chill of the sliding automatic doors and hurried toward the rental car return center. The O'Hare multimodal facility was a chaotic cavern of concrete and noise, smelling of exhaust fumes, wet wool, and floor cleaner. It was a far cry from the hushed luxury of the first-class lounge. Maya needed to drop off her keys and catch the shuttle to Terminal 3. She navigated the sea of frustrated holiday travelers, her heels clicking rhythmically on the linoleum. She approached the Gold Plus counter, hoping for a quick handover. The line was short, but the tension was high. A customer ahead of her was berating the agent about a fuel charge. Maya waited patiently, checking her emails. When the customer finally stormed off, Maya stepped up. "Checking in a sedan," Maya said, her voice professional and crisp. She slid the keys across the scratched laminate counter without looking up from her phone. "I'll need the mileage and the contract number," the agent replied. The voice was rasping. tired and flat, the voice of someone who had said the same 6 phrases 1,000 times that day. Maya paused. The timbre of that voice triggered a sensory memory so sharp it nearly made her drop her phone. It was a sound associated with humiliation, with the feeling of being small, with the smell of cinnamon pretzels and fear. Slowly, Maya looked up. The woman behind the counter was older than Maya remembered. Her hair, once dyed a severe, glossy black, was now streaked with unchecked grey and pulled back into a messy, utilitarian bun. The crisp navy blue airline uniform with the gold wings was gone, replaced by a cheap, ill-fitting polyester vest in a garish shade of green. A plastic name tag pinned crookedly to the lapel read Pat. It was Patricia Moore. She looked worn down, as if the last 5 years had physically compressed her. Deep lines etched the corners of her mouth, and her eyes, once sharp with predatory authority, looked dull and watery. She was typing data into a computer that looked like it was from the 90s, her knuckles swollen. Patricia finished typing and looked up, expecting another faceless traveler. "Okay, the receipt will be emailed to..." Her voice died in her throat. The recognition wasn't immediate. Maya was a woman now, radiating power in a tailored blazer, her posture commanding. But the eyes were the same. The silence that stretched between them was heavy, drowning out the announcements over the PA system and the rumble of the shuttle buses outside. Patricia's face drained of color, turning a sickly shade of ash. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. She gripped the edge of the counter as if the floor were tilting beneath her. She looked around frantically, perhaps expecting Officer Miller to appear, or maybe David Washington with a team of lawyers. But there was no one. Just the two of them, separated by a piece of laminate and a lifetime of consequences. "I see you're still working in travel," Maya said. Her tone wasn't mocking. It wasn't angry. It was simply observant, possessed of a cool, detached neutrality. Patricia swallowed hard. She tried to summon some of her old defiance, the armor she had worn for 20 years at the gate, but it had rusted away. She looked down at her hands. "It's a job," Patricia whispered, her voice cracking. "I can't get hired anywhere else." "Not really." Maya didn't respond. She just watched. She saw the shame radiating off the woman. Not necessarily shame for what she had done, but shame for where she had ended up. "I lost everything, you know," Patricia said, the words tumbling out suddenly, laced with a bitter desperation. She looked up at Maya, her eyes pleading for some acknowledgement of her suffering. "My pension, my reputation, my house. I live in a basement apartment in Wisconsin. I drive an hour and a half just to stand here for 8 hours." Patricia's voice grew tighter, trembling with a resentment she had nurtured for half a decade. "Your father, he didn't just fire me. He destroyed me. He made sure I would never work in aviation again." Maya watched a tear track through the heavy foundation on Patricia's cheek. She felt a flicker of pity, but it was the kind of pity one feels for a gambler who bet the house and lost. It wasn't sorrow, it was just a recognition of cause and effect. Maya leaned in slightly, resting her hands on the counter. The movement made Patricia flinch. "No, Patricia," Maya said softly. Her voice was low, intimate, and devastatingly clear. "My father didn't destroy you. He didn't make you profile a teenager. He didn't make you lie about a security threat. He didn't make you humiliate me to impress a man in a cheap suit." Patricia opened her mouth to argue, but the truth of it silenced her. "You destroyed yourself," Maya continued, her eyes locking onto Patricia's. "My father just turned on the lights so the world could see who you really were. You spent 20 years thinking your power came from a badge and a podium. You forgot that your power comes from how you treat people who can't do anything for you. Patricia slumped. The fight left her body. She looked small, trapped behind the counter of a budget rental agency, surrounded by the cold draft of the automatic doors. The narrative she had told herself for 5 years, that she was a victim of a billionaire's wrath, crumbled under the weight of Maya's gaze. Maya picked up her receipt from the counter. She could have twisted the knife. She could have mentioned her own success, her law degree, or the fact that she was about to fly first class on the airline Patricia used to work for. But Maya realized she didn't need to. The universe had already balanced the scales with a precision no lawyer could match. "I hope this job treats you better," Maya said, stepping back and buttoning her coat. "And I hope, when you see a kid in a hoodie come to this counter, you treat them like a human being. Not because you're afraid of who their father is, but because it's the right thing to do." Maya turned to leave, the wheels of her suitcase gliding smoothly over the floor. "Miss Washington." Maya paused and looked back over her shoulder. Patricia was wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. She looked pathetic, yes, but for the first time, she also looked human. I do. I treat everyone the same now. I had to learn the hard way." Maya studied her for a moment longer. "Good." She checked her watch. "Merry Christmas, Patricia." "Merry Christmas," Patricia whispered to the retreating figure. Maya walked out of the rental center and into the biting wind. She didn't look back. She didn't feel triumphant. She just felt light. The weight of that Christmas Eve 5 years ago had finally evaporated. 20 minutes later, Maya stood in Terminal 3. She walked past the chaotic economy line, past the stressed families and the shouting gate agents. She approached the sleek, blue-lit entrance of the Premier Access lane. She pulled out her phone. The digital boarding pass glowed on the screen. Flight 402, seat 2A. The gate agent, a young man with a bright smile, scanned her phone. "Welcome back, Ms. Washington. We have your favorite seat ready for you." "Thank you," Maya smiled. As she walked down the jet bridge, leaving the cold Chicago winter behind, Maya Washington didn't think about revenge. She didn't think about Gregory Pembroke driving his taxi or Patricia Moore at her rental desk. She thought about the future. She thought about the work she had left to do. She stepped onto the plane, took her seat by the window, and watched the snow begin to fall. The world was cold, but inside, everything was finally warm. And that is the story of how one act of prejudice brought down an entire career and changed an airline forever. It's a powerful reminder that you never truly know who you are talking to, or who is standing right behind them. Patricia and Gregory thought their status gave them the right to judge, but they learned the hard way that true power doesn't need to be loud, and karma doesn't have an expiration date. What would you have done if you were in Maya's shoes? Have you ever been judged by your appearance in a public place? Tell me your story in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of justice served, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss our next story about real-life karma. Stay kind, and I'll see you in the next video.